out pretty soon for Star Wars Destiny. So last time we talked about red villain rares and legendaries, and today we're going to go through the blue villain rare and legendaries. So we'll start out with the characters. We've got Ventress, who comes in at 9 health. She's got 2 damage faces, a focus, a disrupt, and a resource. So no blank faces, which is pretty great. She's got a pretty cool ability. It says, after an opponent discards a card from their hand to reroll their dice, you may force them to choose and discard another card from their hand. So it's not going to stop them if they only have 1 card left, but it can really help Mildex empty people's hands and just deplete how many chances they get to reroll things. With all the manipulation blue has, especially coming up in SoR, to set things to blank and manipulate other people's dice, that can be really powerful if you prevent them from rerolling. Disrupt side, not super wild about it in blue. I mean, you could get that same disrupt for a Night Sister, but the focus is certainly nice. Something that I feel like blue villains can definitely use more of. She comes in at 12 points for a regular version, or 15 for an elite. So I've seen a lot of people talk about pairing her with Dooku, but I think a really good pairing for her was with Jabba. You've got that double disrupt that you can take advantage of and a ton of focus. She doesn't have a discard side, but she kind of inherently forces just extra discarding when someone decides to reroll. And if you can get a 2 discard on Jabba and really deplete their hand, it can really help escalate Mildex for villains. You are kind of low on health here. You don't have Guardian, which worries me a little bit, but it could be a pretty fun deck to play. The next villain, or next card we're going to look at, is Darth Vader Dark Apprentice. So it's the second version of Darth Vader, so you won't be able to mix the two. This one's a lot different than the last guy we've seen. He's only a rare, comes in at 11 health, and has mixed damage types, so a damage side of 1, 2, and 3, with the 3 costing a resource. 2 sides are melee, 1 side's ranged, a discard, and then a pretty cool ability. Deal 3 damage to a character, and then deal 1 damage to this character. So you're damaging Darth Vader to hit some other people. It's a pretty interesting concept. You've got 11 health, so you've got a lot to burn through, but at the same time, you don't really want to be dealing damage to yourself, especially when decks are so fast at killing people nowadays. So I'm not sure how excited I am about this special, but it is exciting to get another special on a villain character. So it comes at 13 points or 17 points. I've seen a lot of people talk about running Elite Darth Vader and Elite FN2199 from our last video review, and I think that's a really good combination. You've got a lot of aggressive attacking here. You've got mixed damage types. I've tried it a couple times to have multiple characters with damage sides that cost a resource, and for some reason it always comes back to bite me, so hopefully it doesn't here. One thing to notice here, you may have read the article we had recently about disrupt and lack of resources becoming a thing with SoR. So this is the first character we've seen today that doesn't have a resource on it. We saw at least one in the red villains, that there's more coming up. So not having a resource on Vader and having a side that costs a resource really makes him not super attractive to me. But I've tried to tinker with him in a few decks, and I think he can definitely work out. He just isn't as stellar as some of our other options. One deck I've tried to run him in is a regular version of Darth Vader, a regular Royal Guard, and then a regular Balatik. You're really buying into the whole mixed damage typing here, but you've got 27 health to work with, which is quite a bit. So if you're damaging Vader, you've got the Royal Guard to help keep him alive. You've also got Bala, so if you can deal 3 damage to someone to re-trigger Bala, that's a pretty powerful special. So you could even bring Emperor's Throne Room for something like that and run Flamethrower and all sorts of cool stuff. So I think this is a possibility. Keeps your body count pretty high, so you don't have to worry about these crazy Crime Lord decks we've seen going on. But again, here at the same time, so this Royal Guard we're not going to look at for 2 more characters, but another character with no resources. So you have 3 dice to start with, but only one of them has a chance of rolling a resource. I do like adding focus from Bala. It lets you focus to that 3 damage special on Darth Vader. You could get something similar out of other characters, but this is a pretty cool way to do it. So next up is Palpatine himself. He's the first legendary that we're looking at today. Comes in at 15 health, costs 21 or 28 points. So if you're running him elite, he's your entire team. We might see cards that cost less in the future, but we don't yet. His die sides are pretty stellar though. So he's got a 2 ranged, a 3 ranged, a 2 discard, a 2 shield, and a 1 resource. And the better thing, the thing that's going to make you want to run him elite, is after you resolve this die, force an opponent to deal 2 damage to their characters distributed as they wish. So he is just pumping out damage. You can imagine if you ran him elite and rolled 2-3 range damages, you could resolve both the next turn for 6, and your opponent would have to deal 4 damage amongst their characters. That's pretty crazy. Then again, if you run him an elite, you've only got 15 health. Makes your team pretty fragile. I've seen a lot of people talk about running him with some kind of generic character that costs 9. So you could run him at 21 points and still bring along a Royal Guard, which could help keep him alive. Or you could bring along a Tusken, which adds a whole slew of cards in yellow and also gives you a little bit more aggression. So yeah, you might get the 3+2 damage from Palpatine and the 3-for-1 from the Tusken, giving you, 8 more health, but almost the same amount of damage in that first turn. Personally, I think this is going to be a really strong combination. I harp on Balatik all the time. I think he is an amazingly strong card, and a lot of people are coming around to that. But here we've got ranged synergy going on for us. Palpatine's going to be dishing out damage like crazy, even only at 1 die. I mean, they're almost always going to try to remove it, but if they can't, he's dealing a ton of damage, which is just going to help you trigger Bala. The one problem with this is, yeah, you're only starting with 2 dice. You do go up to 23 health, which is kind of nice, but when you let your opponent choose how to distribute that damage, they can choose to trigger or not trigger Bala. Yeah, you can put them in some tough situations where they're spreading damage out too much, but at the same time, if Bala is ready and they have a character that's expendable, they can just let that character die and not let you have that double activation. But I think this could be cool. Could be fun. Palpatine does have a resource, unlike the last two, and we've talked about the Royal Guard a little bit already, but we'll go over his cards. So he's generic, which is nice. You can run more than one of him. He is Guardian, but he also has this ability, this text, you cannot play blue abilities on this character, so you're not getting force throw and things like that on them without cheating them in via Holocron or something else. He's only at 8 health. The Rebel Trooper is a Guardian with 7 health, and the Rebel Trooper has proved to be very powerful on the red side, I would say, or on the hero side. He's got 3 damage faces, which is great, a 1, a 2, and a +2, and 2 shielding faces, so he kind of helps with his Guardian ability. But not having any resources is really a stickler for me. He still does fit into a lot of builds. You're just going to have to think of other ways to get your resources outside of just the Royal Guard. Luckily in SoR, there's a ton of things you can do to compensate for that. So this is the favorite deck that I've been running him in, and it's a regular Jabba and then 2 Royal Guards. So you're coming in at 27 health, which is great. You've got Guardian, which is going to keep Jabba alive, hopefully forever. And you've got Focus to help set things up. Yellow, especially Yellow Villain, is pretty good at maintaining resources, especially with all that focus from Jabba. And you can focus into some really powerful melee attacks with Royal Guard. Using the Royal Guards with a discard character means you'll get the chance to use close quarters assaults and some great things like that. So I've run this Jabba Night Sister deck. It's a very similar setup, only this one doesn't really focus on disrupt. Instead, it focuses on discard and often characters with melee damage. Could be a fun deck. I'm going to try it out a little bit more on TTS, so you can check that out on the stream when I get more time. Alright, so we're on past the characters, and now we're looking at supports and upgrades. So the first support is Command Shuttle. It's a 3 cost. This is one of the promos from the preview weekend. It's got a 2 ranged, a 2 shield, a 1 resource, thankfully resources, and then 2 specials that let you trigger the special ability of one of your characters. This is going to be an amazing card once we get 3 or 4 more sets. The problem with it right now is there's really only 3 characters you can use to trigger this. You can trigger Darth Vader Dark Apprentice like we talked about, which is going to let you deal with 3 damage. You can trigger Kylo. It's obviously designed to go with Kylo since it's his command shuttle. You can also trigger IG-88. I haven't figured out a good pairing for that yet. Trying to think of something where you could use this to just continually recycle infantry grenades or something like that. But anyway, we're pretty limited in villain characters that have special abilities. So when we get a few more sets, this is going to be one of those cards, kind of like everybody's always talking about Finn. Finn's going to be so great someday once we have all the cards that he can add into decks. And Command Shuttle's going to be really great someday when we have more characters to choose from. But right now, with just 3 characters, you could make an Elite Darth Vader, Elite Kylo Ren deck. It's definitely a possibility. Or you could do a regular IG-88, Elite Kylo Ren. Or Elite IG-88 regular Kylo Ren, trying to optimize the use of that special side, but right now, out of very specific situations, it's kind of a limited card. Next card is Force Lightnings. This is the other blue legendary villain card. Really powerful card, really high cost. 4 cost. Blue villains can obviously get there with Enrage and a lot of other things they have to gain resources. And it's got a 2 and then a 3 for 1 and a 4 for 1 ranged side. So it gives some more ranged oomph to blue villains, which are things that Night Sisters would love, right? Night Sisters get jetpacks when you mix in yellow, but a lot of times if you can't roll that ranged damage side, it becomes a pain. And you really don't want to count on Force Throw or whatever else to roll that one ranged side. Force Lightning now has 3 sides, which could be great. The special lets you deal 1 damage to a character, and then you can remove a die showing a blank to re-roll this die instead of removing it from your pool. So if you have a bunch of blanks, you can get rid of them so Feel Your Anger doesn't hurt you so hard, and also keep this die in your pool to keep cycling through damage. So pretty powerful card. You can imagine it works great on Palpatine, but pretty good in just these blue ability holocron cheater decks in general. Lightsaber Pike. When I first saw this card, I loved it. It's got a resource, which is great because I'm worried about resources in this set. It's got a shield, very thematic with guards that would use it. 3 melee faces. I love melee faces now that I like close quarters assault so much. But 2 of them are modifiers, and you get this 4 for 1 modifier. When I compare this and its cost to something like Jetpack, or not Jetpack, Flamethrower, it's just a little bit disappointing. I mean, you could get almost the same damage phases on another card, but they wouldn't be, modifiers, which is great. And you get a probably better ability that lets you deal 1 damage to multiple characters rather than action remove this die to give a non-attached character a shield. If it didn't have non-attached, I wouldn't even think it would be unbalanced. It'd still be, an okay ability that rarely gets used. There are some pretty cool situations where this ability can get used. One cool thing about this is even if you roll blank, at the end of the turn, if your opponent claims and you've got a bunch of actions and you're searching for damage and you just don't get it, at least you can turn it into a shield. It's kind of a fallback. I've also seen some situations where, I keep rolling modifier sides and I don't want to discard cards from my hand because my opponent's milling me, but he's got a 1 damage out there or something that might kill someone. Well, you can throw a shield out there and just remove the die. If you have that +4 side and your opponent rolls Force Throw, you've got no way to re-roll it. We'll just remove it and give someone a shield. It's better than taking 4 damage to the face. But still, when you compare it to other melee weapons we have, like Kylo's lightsaber or regular lightsaber, I mean, regular lightsaber gets redeploy, unblockable damage, still shielding, a 3 for 1 face, a modifier face. Everything about it I like better for the most part. So it's hard to justify this. It's going to have a spot in melee decks especially melee decks that are trying to use close quarters assault or build up as many weapons on people as possible. The one thing that's interesting about it, I thought at first, I can run some cool melee deck with FN2199, but the big problem with that is the 2 modified sides. I mean, you play it on FN2199, your chance of being able to roll it and resolve it right away are pretty low. Alright, next we have Lured of Power. I think this is the last blue rare legendary card. And it's a rare that I really like. 2 cost. Yeah, it's got 2 blanks, but we've got Power of the Dark Side and all sorts of cool stuff to manipulate blanks on the villain side of the game. It does have all modified sides, and normally I hate modified sides, but this card, I love them. You may resolve this modifier side of this dice to modify any symbol. So basically, if you can roll any other black or non-modified face, you're going to be able to use this card. I've seen a lot of people use that +2 side when they roll a 1 resource with someone. Gaining 3 resources that first turn after you pay 2 lets you play a lightsaber or a lot of other things. And it can really just accelerate your game. You can use it to pump out damage, you can use it to pump out discard or disrupt or whatever you need. Whatever the theme of your deck is probably what you're going to have a lot of black or unmodified die sides for. So you can imagine that whatever it is, you're going to be able to modify it and make it better. The 2 blanks is kind of a detractor, but like I said, we got Power of the Dark Side, we got Night Sisters, we got a ton of things to re-roll this die or manipulate it. So overall, I think this is going to be a great rare. It's going to be pretty staple in blue villain decks. The other cool thing about this is it's an upgrade, and you don't have to play it on a blue villain. A lot of these ability upgrades we get have to be cheated on with Holocron. I mean, you could run this in Night Sister Jabba, and throw it on Jabba. That way, if he survives or doesn't, it works out. Or even on that Guardian Jabba deck, you can imagine getting a 4 discard with this and the 1 discard and the 2 discard face from Jabba. So really, really powerful card. So again, thanks for tuning in. We'll try to hit up the yellow villain, rare, and legendaries later this week, and then we'll move on to the hero side of the dice cards, get through the neutrals, and then we can start looking at the events. All right, thanks for tuning in, guys.